Hi, this is Paul Berkoven with Elk Spring Education, your place for real estate and financial know-how. And today we're doing an Elk Spring Tidbit on the homeownership process, and in particular, the tax savings that come along with homeownership in the U.S. The tax savings of homeownership is one of the major areas that people don't pay attention to when they're thinking of owning a home. And it's a really important one that affects optimal decision making. This applies for everyone, folks who are coming out of a rental into a first home, but also people who have a home who are going to move up maybe to a more expensive home, or even the opposite, folks who are downsizing. What the tax savings are with the future home, and your decisions around your budget there are super important and can have big effects on what to do. So a key thing to say before we get into some quick explanation here is that a great strategy before you make decisions about how much you're going to spend or what type of home you're going to buy is to get some input from a great consulting CPA, or in some cases a consulting lender, mortgage lender can help as well, to give you an idea of what the tax ramifications are going to be, which can affect your budget. And this is important so that you don't underbuy or in some cases overbuy too. So the tax savings are super important. So just as a general overview here, what are they and how do they work? So the main thing that I would say is that when you own a home, you get to write off 100% of the interest that you pay on a mortgage, and you also get to write off 100% of the real estate taxes on that property, whatever those may be. In some cases, you get to write off closing costs, certain closing costs, and there's also a ways of writing off other expenses in some cases. But these things are for sure. And so what you want to think about with this, with your CPA, is that the real benefit for you is how the write-offs compare to standard deduction. So it's write-off versus standard deduction. And in the U.S., everybody gets to write something off. It's called a standard deduction if you can't itemize on your taxes. So what your standard deduction is depends on if you're single or married filing separately or jointly. But the point is that these standard deductions can range from $6K to $13K in general numbers right now. And they change each year. You can look up on the IRS website what the standard deduction is for the coming year, so based on your filing. But the point is that if your write-offs exceed the standard deduction, then you get to itemize. And for many people, when they own a home, their write-offs will exceed standard deduction. Again, this is something to check out with your consulting CPA. And financialpro.info, the URL you're seeing there, is just a place. When we finish, I want to ask you to take just a couple moments to give 2 quick feedback questions, legit, just a couple seconds to do it. If you need help finding a great consulting CPA, feel free to just write the word CPA in one of those boxes, and we'll get some referrals to you, folks that you could talk to, and see if they're good for you. So in any event, here's the thing. A lot of people, when they're making a decision to own a home, will think about their budget and compare it to their budget now. Like they'll say, okay, I'm spending $2,000 a month for my housing, and maybe if we stretch, we can get to $2,200 a month. And so that's cool if it works, but there are many times in a homeownership decision that when one gets into the market, one realizes, oh man, if I could spend $20,000 more, I could get something that I really like, or that really fits my needs. And so one thing to understand is that a lot of times when you own the next home, whatever that is, your write-off may go up. And if it does, that means you can afford more. For example, if you have an additional $200 a month in tax savings because of getting out of a rental into a mortgage, or perhaps moving from a smaller mortgage to a larger one, that literally could be $100,000 in purchase price, depending on the interest rate and the amount down and so on and so forth. But the point is, it in almost any market would make a big difference in the type of home that you could consider. And so one of the really important things is to get a good sense of what the tax ramifications are of your proposed move before you get into the market and start making tactical decisions, right? That's a key point in this tidbit. The second key point is that it is also possible, in many cases with good tax advice, to optimize other deductions you may have by being able to beat standard deduction. So if you're somebody who's not beating standard deduction now, or even if you are, there may be things that you could do with a future home. You know, is there a home office space that you could write off? You know, is there an entity that you could start that would have other write-offs that are, you know, legal and legit, but would allow you to leverage the benefit of this even more? So there are a lot of times that I've watched clients who get some good CPA advice up front also create some additional savings on the back end by working closely with that type of professional. So financialpro.info, if you would just take a couple moments right now, 2 quick feedback questions, a couple things you can request there, all free and all good. And that's our tidbit for today. Thanks.